Hello and welcome to Monocle on Culture. I'm Robert Bounds. Now, London shines like few other cities in the summertime. The pace becomes slower, the parks busier, and if we're honest, the tube insufferable. And of course, our artistic institutions bring out their very best for the summer months. This week, we're spotlighting two great exhibitions currently on in the city. Once Upon a Time in London at Saatchi Yates riffs on the artistic legacy of the city, bringing together works old and new to paint a portrait of a place that continues to be a global hub for art and creativity. Then we'll look at the brilliant British painter Jenny Saville's new show at the National Portrait Gallery, a glorious celebration of an artist's evolution and very singular talent. So do stay tuned. That's all coming up right here on Monocle on Culture. First up, let's wander down to St James's for Once Upon a Time in London. On the opening day of the exhibition at Saatchi Yates, the gallery's Edie Jones gave me the rundown on the show.
We conceived of the idea, we've been working on it for a year now, and we wanted to reinstate London as a cultural capital of the world. And I think it was quite slow after COVID, Brexit, and there were conversations about Paris and Milan and Dubai being the epicenter of the cultural space, and with the emerging artists that are coming from London and appreciating the history that London has created, artists culturally wide, fashion, music, we thought it was the perfect time to present all the best works in the world, and we think they're all Londoners.
And so what we're calling it is that the subtitle could be No Biggie, then basically.
But actually they're all really, really big, amazing paintings, exactly.
And there's an amazing sort of array of styles here. I can see Freud, I can see Gilbert and George, I can see Francis Bacon. Cecily Brown was who we started off with on the front left-hand side. What is the sort of overarching theme of this thing, other than, is London the writing through the stick of rock?
It is. I mean, we've got, as you said, we've got a plethora of artists. We've got Freud, Bacon, Hockney, Michael Andrews, and then we've got younger artists like Sloan, Cato, Joanna Van Son. And our idea was to bring every artist that is from London, has worked in London, has been touched by London. They don't necessarily all have the same subject, but they've all been, their careers are where they are today because of London. And their stories are undeniably London-centric. And we're celebrating the fact that London has created all of these people and helped spark their journey and led their artistic practice. And it's an undeniably strong force in this room, and that is because of the City of London. So that's what we wanted to champion, these artists as well as how much we love the city.
And I guess a successful through line is also the fact that it is being curated, but it is also kind of happily a mashup. There is a sense that there is such a cacophony of creativity in this city that actually there is no set style, there is no period. The stuff is recognisably, the names and the styles are recognisable, but everything else kind of isn't. Is that fair to say?
100%. I'd also say, for example, we're just looking opposite one of the far right walls, and there's an Alalu Sloan painting, an artist of ours, who we had our first solo show with last year, which broke records for the amount of people that were in St James in one time. And right next to this canvas by Sloan is a portrait by Lucian Freud, and that is kind of the premise of the show. And I would say this bit in particular, for me, this is why we've done what we've done, because Freud started just as Sloan started. They're not textbook the same, but he was the same young artist using whatever means he could to create work, and they have very different subject matters, but London enabled them to become at whatever point in their career they were. So Lucian Freud, one of the most prolific artists in the world, is next to arguably one of the most famous artists in the world right now. Yeah. And you would never have put them, I mean, curatorially, you wouldn't really put them together because subject-wise, painting style, they don't match. But if you think about the context and you think about them as artists and them creating, it makes so much sense as to why they're together for our London show. And I would say this section, and as you can see, Phoebe and Arthur Saatchi Yates, who curated the whole show, and they have very successfully attempted to combine the old and the new, just reinforcing the fact that they all started from the same place, and that was in London.
And also, I mean, thinking of Sloan, and then we've got Yinka Shonibari piece down here. This must be a Chrysophylle. There's also there's the fact that there's a lot of different currents. There are a lot of different tides going in and out in this city, creatively, artistically, right? So and casting your eye across this room, even the artist that we recognise immediately is kind of an act of curation in itself. I mean, there's a hell of a lot going on.
100%, 100%.
Looking around, I can obviously see Damien Hirst's piece, Bridget Riley as well. So there really are kind of all sorts of horses for courses here.
There is.
So it's taken a year to put this stuff together. Is this this is collections, this is loans, and some of it's selling? To what proportion is?
So it's a complete mixture. We've got loans from museums, we've got loans from private collections, we've got loans from private collectors, and then we've got works for sale as well. So a lot of the Saatchi Yates artists, so Benjamin Spires, Joanna Van Son, Cato, Sloan, Danny Fox, and then we have a work by Ollie Epp as well. They were all made specifically for this show. So this is the first time they're ever being seen. So it's a nice mix of works from all over, which again celebrates why London is so amazing as well, because we've been able to acquire all these works internationally from these famous London artists because they are so iconic to be included in these amazing collections.
Now, outside your gallery here at Saatchi Yates on Berry Street, you have an amazing... I mean, how far does this queue go around the block? Because there's a huge queue of really young art lovers, collectors. Who are they here for proportionally, do you think, other than obviously wanting to genuflect at the altar of the brilliance of the last 100 years of British art?
So to set the scene, it's 5:30 p.m. on Thursday afternoon, and we're on Berry Street, and there is a queue of maybe 200 people slinking down towards Christie's and then around the block, all to get a drawing / t-shirt from Sloan himself. So Sloan put on his story that he was releasing these drawings, which he's drawn in collaboration with DJ AG, and the first 100 people will receive a t-shirt from Sloan himself, who is imminently going to arrive. And it's amazing because these people wouldn't necessarily know much about the gallery or know much about Freud and Bacon, and to bring Sloan and then to bring other artists and fans of different genres all together just shows the spirit of London and shows the success of the hub and the culture of the city.
That was Edie Jones. Now, Edie mentioned those Sloan T-shirts, for which there was a huge, huge queue on opening night. Let's hear from some of those in that hopeful line. Guys, I'm from Monocle Radio.
Yep.
And I'm doing a story on this show here at Saatchi Yates. Who have you guys... You're first in the queue. Congratulations. Who have you come here for?
We've come here for Sloan.
Okay.
Sloan, yeah.
And he's got some works in the show, but he's got obviously more than a few. What are you hoping for today?
I know he's giving away 100 drawings, and we're here just to get a drawing, hang it on our wall or something like that.
They look pretty good. All right, guys. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
You're not going to have to fight with them. I think it's going to be okay once we get in there. I'm going to walk down the queue. What about you, sir? Who are you here for to see at Saatchi Yates? There's plenty of nice-looking drinks in there and some fantastic-looking art, but what about you?
Well, I'm just here for the painting. And as well to maybe have a chance to meet him as well. That'd be good. Have a conversation. It'd be nice to see the face behind the art. And yeah.
And he's a sort of he's a very creative merchant of chaos, right? I mean, he likes to cause a scene, and there's a queue around the block here on Berry Street. It's never been seen before out any of the art galleries, any of the restaurants in this place. So it's kind of an amazing thing. So what do you know of him at the moment?
Well, I started following him in about 2022 when his brand started blowing up, and then when his art pieces started coming up, they were just mesmerizing, to be honest. The thing that really took me was the collaboration with the FA Cup. And that was just my thing of, he's really big now, and I need to get a piece of that, I need to get a piece of the fame.
and I mean, it's a slightly different way of doing this, to kind of do a drop and to announce something on Instagram and this kind of thing. But this is basically the story of what the art galleries have been doing for thousands of years, right? Hundreds of years. It's causing a commotion and getting people to turn up for it. Sloan's an amazing company in there. I mean, there's artists like Lucian Freud, Damien Hirst, Bridget Riley, fantastic people. Does it mean much to you to see him in the context of all these other great London-based and London-centric artists?
Definitely. I mean, he's breaking a sort of trend with his sort of types of art. And I think that's very unique in the London scene, where people usually go for the niche stuff, the classic stuff. And yeah, that's pretty what's pretty impressive about him, to be honest. Yeah.
We came here to see Oliver Sloan. And our quote of the day is "Fuck Oliver Sloan." Fox Lawn.
Fox Lawn, bro.
Fox Lawn.
Fox Lawn.
Fox Lawn.
Another quote is, what's it called? hey, wait, hold on. Horses don't stop, they keep going.
A few excitable voices from the queues outside Saatchi Yates there. Now let's head inside the gallery to hear from one of the artists with work up on the walls. Benjamin Spears is a London-based painter whose surrealist figurative work imaginatively and often uncannily calls out for a closer look. And here is Benjamin.
I'm here with artists that I know and that are friends of mine, and it's always incredibly exciting to see what they've done. But also, speaking personally, I feel like I do situate myself within a kind of line of London painters. So it's incredibly exciting to see my own work alongside some of my heroes. I mean, my piece tonight is hung next to the etching plates of Lucian Freud, and they're some of my favourite of his etchings as well. And it's just really, really exciting to see these things, yeah.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, it's I won't say curatorially it's a mashup, but it sort of is, because artists of all different stripes, all different sort of types, all different backgrounds are on show here in this show. So, as you say, it's a bit like rearranging the books on your bookshelf. Suddenly you put one author's name next to another and they're in conversation whether they like it or not. Is that how it seems to you, having looked at this hang?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think not only that, London itself, and I've lived here for 35 years now, London is, for me, it always has been a city of jump cuts, and you go from one place which is very strongly itself, and that might be incredibly green and with lots of space like Hampstead Heath, and before you know it, you've walked to Chalk Farm, and it's a very, very different kind of atmosphere. But I think one that once you're used to the discontinuities, it's actually extremely pleasurable. And I think London does have an atmosphere and an aesthetic which really does seep into the kind of psyches of the artists who work here for over a long period of time. And I think you can really feel that despite the variation in stylistic choices throughout the show.
And there's a kind of discipline and lack of the art schools and the teaching culture here. There's also the sometimes rackety, sometimes inspired choices of commercial galleries as well. And this show seems to be a celebration of that ecosystem. That kind of it tries to be as on purpose as it can be, but it's always a slightly accidental ecosystem. Is that how it seems to you as a working artist here?
Yeah, again, absolutely. I would completely agree with that. And I think we live in a slightly more generous time than when I graduated from art school in the mid to late 1990s, where a show really would be criticised, quite heavily criticised, unless it was incredibly tight conceptually / visually. And I think there's a sense now that actually there's space, both in terms of the market, but also in terms of the kind of critical reception for work, for there to be something almost anarchically eclectic. And I think that's, at the moment, we should really enjoy that moment, because they don't last forever.
And since we walked into this room to get a little bit of peace and quiet, Benjamin, you pointed out a work on the wall that is actually a portrait of you that you have more than a passing interest in and more than a passing resemblance to, of course. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that looks like, if that's not weird for you, and tell us about the artist that made it.
Yeah, sure. So this is an ex-student of mine, and we've both influenced each other's lives in huge ways, and we've become tremendously close friends, travelling the world together and doing all kinds of things together. And he's been making this painting of me in complete secrecy. I had no idea until I saw it, and it was presented as a sort of shocking fait accompli, which made little prickles in my eyes and a lump in my throat when I saw it, because I think I feel very much like I'm understood as a person and as an artist that I wanted to be, and to see that reflected back at me through the eyes of someone with whom I have not only a very close personal relationship, but also someone that I taught at art school. It's deeply moving.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful take on a portrait, I suppose, as well. There, as I said, there's a passing resemblance. It's a kind of beautiful surrealist thing as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair to say, and I think it's much more about a collection of signifiers that both represent me but also have a feeling of me about them. But I think the gesture of the way the figure is standing is actually a way I might stand. So
it's a beautiful moment. Well, look, thanks for your time and congratulations on being part of this landmark London show. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
That was Benjamin Spears, and Once Upon a Time in London is on now at Saatchi Yates until the 17th of August. Finally, on today's show, at the National Portrait Gallery, there's a really wonderful exhibition by the British painter Jenny Saville, a survey show that takes us from those big, bold female nudes painted in the most muted of pink-grey flesh tones in the early 1990s to the riot of colour and hints of the surreal and abstract, although still recognisably in portraiture, of her most recent works. To put this incredible painter in a bit of context, we asked the editor and curator Francesca Gavin for the lowdown.
She studied at Glasgow School of Art, British, but she studied there between 1988 and 92. And at that period in time, her degree show was a huge statement. And she immediately was brought up by Charles Saatchi, who actually commissioned her to create enormous triptych of paintings. So during that YBA period, when painting was the most unfashionable medium you could go near, no one was making it, Jenny was this kind of beacon of, oh my God, monumental paintings. So throughout the 90s, and definitely peaking in sensation, she was like the big figurative painter of her generation. But what's interesting about her is that she completely avoided fame. She's like the anti-Tracy Emin in a way. She apparently had a chat with Cy Twombly, who said to him, come to Italy, and she moved to Italy, and then she completely disappeared in terms of public space, only emerging for super big, giant, mainstream shows at Gagosian over the past decades. So this is actually the first time she's ever had a big museum show in the UK.
So she's done a Cy in that sense of going off to Italy, being this mystery, genius painter. Some people go, well, I love his work. Some people just go, I don't know, it looks a lot like Sky or whatever. I mean, I love Cy Twombly's work. I'm sure you do too. I don't know.
I love it.
But that's quite interesting to be a bit like, I understand Coldplay were taken under the wing of Radiohead and said, if you want to have a long career, don't do a million interviews. Don't be this. Don't do that. I don't know if they followed that template, but that's very interesting. I think that's
the thing. And so in a way, it kind of is, that amazing thing they always say that in order to create like a market or attraction, you kind of disappear and people still want you. It's like low supply creates high demand, I think would probably be the business way of putting it. And I think that's exactly what she did. So she was like this person who, at the beginning of her career, the work is actually amazing. The work she was creating in the 90s was interesting for a variety of different ways, and I'm happy to blab about them.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because obviously we walk into the show at the National Portrait Gallery and you are met with those big super-size models in sort of quite grimy flesh tones, white flesh tones, obviously, pinks and greys and purples. You see the ghost lines of bras and underwear. You see that famous image of the model on the stool, big woman, small stool, little ballerina pumps. It's amazing, iconic
a lot
painting,
of my self-portraits, which is what made them so great, or they're all kind of riffing on the self-portrait in some way. Sometimes she would press her entire body against glass and you have this real squishing of flesh. And at that period in time, think about it, this is the era of wonder bras and you're supposed to be completely flat stomach 2 days after giving birth. And it's like anti-feminism lad period coming out of the real objectification of the female body. Jenny Saville really represented a woman examining their own physicality. So it felt super fresh and actually has had a lasting impact. And that work that she was creating at such a young age is so technically interesting. There's a lot of doubling. A lot of the tropes that she did later were all established then. This kind of doubling of the face, the fleshiness of the body, maybe a kind of ugliness, a brutality to like bruised lips and mushed up and ugliness.
And she painted birthmarks and all sorts of things. She painted, and whether they were for models, but there certainly was an honesty about the topography of the body, I suppose, right?
And for me, that work still really stands up. You can see where it came from, and that's the thing you really see with Jenny Saville. She wears her influences on her sleeve. Like, that early work 100% comes out of the Lee Bowery paintings by Lucian Freud. Like, straight up. There's a direct correlation, and they're not, they're painted within the same decade, or she was coming out of that decade. So, and that's, for me, it's Freud's best work. So, like, there's something really interesting about that. I personally think that the work did not necessarily get better. There are moments within the show that are interesting. I particularly like this kind of erotic room where there's like layers of charcoal drawing, and in particular like a woman and a black man kind of doubled and seen in reverse, and in repetition. There's something quite sexy about that. It's almost like sex is a big orgy between two people.
Yeah.
Like this too many limbs, too many faces.
And limbs in movement. And it looks orgiastic, and it looks like studies for sketches of a far more sacred type.
I mean, 100%.
Right?
As I said, she
It's
wears
very
her
interesting.
influences on her sleeve, which are high Renaissance. We're talking Raphael, we're talking Michelangelo, we're talking Titian. Very, very clearly, like in terms of compositions, in terms of like approaches to anatomy and the physical body. It's very, very much reflecting that kind of history of painting and in particular the Renaissance. I mean, what's really nice about the show, it also includes some charcoal drawings and pencil drawings, and you see some of, again, it's very classic work. It's not pretending not to be in some ways. Like it tries to be, it's definitely from a modern point of view, but it's, it's a pretty classic. It's a big body. It's a big face. It's a triangle that there's a lot of mother and child things. You immediately
so those are
think
beautiful.
of
There's that
Madonna
room
and
with
child.
and these are the sketches and the pencil works on paper. I thought they were beautiful to see her real natural hand and her natural. You get to really see the kind of boldness and confidence of her with in a material you can't delete. You can't get rid of charcoal on paper, right? And I thought these were really amazing, and they're like Rembrandts and they're like Leonardo's, and there was something very graceful to.
I mean,
to those.
100%. She clearly is an incredible draftsman, a very skilled painter. She's worked with anatomy. She's looked at art history. She chose not to hang out at the Groucho.
Yeah.
She chose to move to Italy and exist.
So you don't have her mobile?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No.
Just checking.
Though I did go to the Groucho last night. What does that say about me? For me, though, the problem happens when she focuses on these young figures, the portraiture, and the later works. And there's something really bloody and visceral and a bit uncomfortable, and I can't. All the things I love about the early work and can see that are interesting about this kind of repeated figures things disappear from me in the more recent work.
Is that to do with colours as well? I wonder, because she's so good with such a muted palette where you see the courage of her convictions, perhaps, where there's less going on. And suddenly when there's a lot of splashes of colour, they look to me, some of these later works, a bit like sort of Instagram images that you've doctored with AI. Maybe that's the point. Maybe she's talking about how we view ourselves in an era of where everyone views it on the size of an iPhone screen. I don't know. I mean,
100%, and they seem quite clear about that. I mean, this is an exhibition that's made up of a group of ongoing, Gagosian gallery shows, which are high-level product in monumental size being given to big collectors who want a big fat face in their living room or in their storage space. So it's like you can
My storage space is not complete.
No, hey, I've had those conversations. Yeah. So you feel like that kind of thing. But for me, yes, I agree. Like, there's something very bloody. It's quite violent. It looks like kids who've been beaten up, bluntly, at sometimes. But in her desire to try to reflect our relationship with technology, it ends up looking a little like Mr. Brainwash, which is really upsetting because she's better than that. There are moments where you'll see she'll do lips and eyes. There's a softness to that. But the actual attempt to incorporate our changing relationship to the figure, to the face, which is definitely to do with how we're so much more used to looking at figures and faces on screens, it just doesn't quite work for me.
Yeah.
But the show was rammed with tons of people. It is very
there's a lot of young girls who were there when I saw it, sort of early teenage girls. And it was really interesting listening, sort of eavesdropping on a bit of their conversations to see what they were making of it. Because it's a huge body of work about the female form.
And
when you're coming into when that's going to become important to you and your ownership of that is going to become very important to you. And some of these girls were having very interesting discussions around what it was to be beautiful. Aren't her eyes beautiful, or isn't there? And some of them were giggling because it's funny and it's big naked ladies, right? Basically, right. So there was this sort of little bit of sort of shame creeping in, or a little bit of awkwardness. And there's also, of course, when you're amongst a school trip or a student's trip, there's that kind of no one can take it too seriously and be cool.
Of course, but actually,
I thought it was very interesting.
The subject matter.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the figures that we're seeing in Monumentality, apart from the ones that are mother and child or the sexual ones, are really of young girls, large or young people.
Yeah.
That seems to be like the main topic of subjects that are represented here. So it makes sense to me that that would be an audience that are resonating. They're seeing themselves reflected perhaps somehow in the painting at monumental scale. There's like, it's not easy painting in a lot of ways. I mean, you know, it's got a variety of, it's really visceral, it's really applied. But yeah, for me, I think a lot of it also comes with the early work made in the 90s. It's iconic. It's canonical. It really is painting that makes us address what it is to have a female body.
Beautifully put, and no better place to end it than at the beginning of, well, perhaps an uneven show, but one with great quality at its heart, perhaps. That is Jenny Saville, The Anatomy of Painting at the National Portrait Gallery. Francesca Gavin, it's always wonderful to have you on the programme. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Francesca Gavin there, and Jenny Saville, The Anatomy of Painting, is on at the National Portrait Gallery until the 7th of September. And that is all for this week. Monocle on Culture is produced by Sophie Monaghan-Coombs and Steph Chungu, and Steph also edits the show. We'll be back at the same time next week, but until then, from me, Robert Bound, thank you for tuning in.
What does culture say about the way we live and how we could live better? Join Monocle in Barcelona this September for our annual Quality of Life conference. From bold new voices in media, design and the arts to lively debates on diplomacy, design and urbanism, it's 3 days of fresh thinking and creative exchange. Find out more and book your seat at monocle.com/conference.